We've learnt the SQL queries we need to get data from a database and to add and delete data. And we've learnt the more complex query that we'll need later to select favourite movies for a given user. But so far we can only do all this working directly with the database in PHP MyAdmin. In this chapter we'll learn how to embed those SQL queries inside PHP, so that we can work with the database through a browser. In PHP MyAdmin there was no need to do anything to connect to the database. We simply clicked on the database name and then on the table names to gain access to them. But to access the database through a browser, we have to connect to it first. Let's begin by importing a test database to work with, using PHP MyAdmin as we did before. Open up PHP MyAdmin, click on Import, and browse through the working files and select Initialise test database.sql from the working files folder for this lesson, and click Go. The database name test_db should appear on the left. Click on its name and you should see a table containing the fields ID, name, password and secrets. Each of these fields contains some very simple data, like user1 and user1 pass, etc. And we'll use this to demonstrate working with the database in PHP, and later in the chapter also to demonstrate security vulnerabilities which occur if we're not careful and which we must overcome. Now we need to write the code to connect to this database. As this is outside of the project, we'll do this in PHP demos. In PHP demos, make a new text file and call it connect.php. Open it up in Komodo Edit and start out by entering the opening and closing PHP tags. Within the tags, we need to set up 4 variables, which are the connection parameters we need to gain access to the database. These are the name of the database, the name of the server it's on, the account name of the user that we're using to connect to it, and that user's password. I could use 4 separate variables for this, like dbName, dbPass, dbServer, things like that. But to keep things neat, I'm going to use one associative array for all 4 values. We'll use $dbConnect as the array name. And I'm going to use camel case for my PHP variables. Then we set up $dbConnect as an array. And inside the parentheses for array, we're going to assign the 4 values that we need as a series of key value pairs. We're using our local machine, and the server name, as we know, is localhost. So we enter, in single quotes, server, and then the equals and greater than arrow, and then in single quotes, localhost, comma. We'll use the default admin username to gain access, and that username is root. So we have user and then arrow root, both of them in single quotes. Comma at the end again. As we're working on our local system, no passwords needed, so we can leave the password blank by putting in single quotes with nothing in between them for the value of pass. And lastly, the name of the database is test_db. So name, and then the arrow, and then test_db, both in single quotes. And notice that there is no comma at the end of this line. We're using root, the system administrator's account, as the username to connect to the database. And we've set the password to empty by enclosing nothing within the quotes, meaning there's no password. We wouldn't do this if the project was online, as there's no security at all. We're handing over full access to our database with no password. But for the moment we're working on our local system only, so it doesn't matter. Those are our 4 connection parameters. Now we connect to the database using a MySQLi connection. MySQLi stands for MySQL Improved. and this has superseded the older MySQL connect command, which you shouldn't be using anymore for new projects. Type in new MySQLi and then parentheses. This command, new MySQLi, starts a new instance of the MySQLi class, and it's followed by the 4 arguments that we've just set up: the server name, the username, the password, and the database name, and these must be entered in that order. So now we type in $db connect and then in square brackets and single quotes server, and then $db connect square brackets single quotes user, and then $db connect square brackets single quotes pass, and finally $db connect square brackets single quotes name. And as I did with the connection array, I'll split this onto separate lines just to make it easier to read. To use this class, we need to create an object. We do this in the same way as we used for assigning values to variables. The object name, just like a variable name, begins with a $sign. So we have dollar and then the object name and then equals. So $db equals and then the rest of the new MySQLi command with its parameters. Now this object $db gives access to a range of methods which are available in the MySQLi class. Objects are rather like super powerful associative arrays. They contain a whole range of information which we get by calling various methods. For example, $db now stores information about the host and the connection type. We can access some of this by using echo $db and then an arrow pointing to the right and then host_info. Save this and refresh the page in your browser and you should see information about the localhost connection printed out. Every time you see this arrow operator, which is a dash and a greater than symbol with no space between them, we're accessing information in the object to the left, $db, using the method on the right, which is host_info. Information about connection errors is accessed using another method, connectErrorNumber, which returns a numerical error code. Type in echo $db arrow connectErrorNumber, spelled like that, connect_ERRNO, and refresh the page in your browser again. That zero has appeared on the end of the line, so to make things clearer, let's put in some line breaks, some HTML line breaks with echo and then in quotes BR tags. And then I'll select and copy that and paste it in again below, just so that we can see what we're doing in the browser. That's better. You should see the number 0 at the top of the window. This means that there was no error in the connection. Any number higher than 0 means that there was some error. As it stands, that's not very convincing proof that we've connected to anything. So let's verify that we are actually talking to this database by creating an error, first at the PHP end of things, and then at the database end. Change the value of the password to anything other than empty, which will make the connection fail, and refresh the page in your browser. You should see an error message telling you the line number where the error occurred, so that's proof that we've failed to connect. Now return the value of password to empty. And refresh the page again and the problem is solved. 0 is displayed again. Now we'll make the connection fail at the database end. Go into PHP-MyAdmin in another tab in your browser and change the name of the database by clicking on Databases, and then on TestDB, and then on the table name, and then Operations, and then in Rename Database to, change the database name. Click on Go and then on OK, and then on Yes when it asks you if you want to reload the database. Go back to the other tab and refresh the page again, and you'll get a different error message saying that the database testDB is unknown, because obviously it no longer exists. It's looking for a non-existent database. So we've proved in two different ways that we are indeed talking to the database. In PHP-MyAdmin now, rename the database back to test_db. And the error code will return to 0. We can use that error code to stop the program if a connection error occurs, using an if statement, just as we did earlier. If there's any problem with the connection, then the value of db connect error number will be greater than 0. So an if clause, which tests for that condition, will trap any connection errors. I think you could write that condition yourself. Write the condition now which tests for $db arrow connect error number being greater than 0. And if it is, echo the message database connection error and exit the program. So what we need is if, and it's parentheses, and then $db arrow, and then connect error number, and then is greater than 0. So if that is greater than 0, and then the braces. And then inside the braces, echo database connection error, and exit the program. Now, any error code greater than 0 will run the code inside the braces. If we want, we can get information about what went wrong by concatenating onto the string database connection error the method connect error. So we add on $db arrow connect _error. Change the password again so that the connection fails. And now we'll get more detailed information about the nature of the error. This is for debugging purposes. We'd want to remove this in production, as we don't want to reveal any information about how our system works to the whole world. Remove the incorrect password and put that back to empty so that we can go on and connect with no problems. We have now successfully connected to the database, and in the next lesson we will embed an SQL query in PHP and use it first of all to select the full set of data in the database and display this in the browser.